How's it going, y'all? It's turn-based here. Tomorrow morning, we are going to be blessed with one of the most broken units in this game to ever come out, and maybe will ever come out, Hatsune Miku, the new navigator that is part of the collab anniversary event that they're doing. Now, if you haven't seen her kit yet, or somehow have been living under a rock, I guess, she is based around a mechanic that gives you 2 whole extra turns in your rotation. So essentially, she turns a 6-turn fight into an 8-turn fight. And obviously, that is really, really strong. But that is stronger for some characters more than others, especially when we are considering her higher awarenesses, such as A1. Her rotations can become a little bit fuzzy when it comes to some of these DPS and strategist characters. She doesn't have right now a clearly defined role other than just being like super broken. So in terms of like a should you pull video that everybody wants to do, the answer is obviously yes, you want to pull this character. But if you have the question of how much should I invest in this character, is this character going to be like super beneficial to my favorite characters? Well, I think it's going to be better to do a little bit of a synergistic dive into how some of these characters interact with that 8-turn rotation, and specifically how her higher awarenesses interact with their rotations as well, such as their highlights. Because if you haven't seen, her A1 reduces all of the highlight cooldowns when you activate the virtual concert state. What this means is that characters that have used their highlights already in the fight can activate them an additional time, in addition to charging the highlight gauge faster. So, for example, a character like, let's say, Frostgale Katone usually can only fit about 2 highlights into her rotation. Well, now she can probably do 3 without needing Chord or any other characters. So, the question today is, based on that extra turn, 8-turn rotation, and the highlight buff from the A1, which characters benefit most from her kit? I think the simplest way to go about this is just to have a tier list of which characters are the best for this specific scenario. Now, as you can see, I've got a couple different tiers around here. We've got the absolute best, highest synergistic characters, all the way down to characters that actually clash with some of her kit ideology, which is shocking to me because at first thought, you kind of think, okay, she's going to be broken with every character. She's best in slot on every team, but there's actually a couple characters where I don't think her extra turn or her highlight buffing really does as much as it does for other characters, and actually makes him kind of useless in some cases. So we'll go over those characters. Just to get it out of the way first, we're not going to be covering any 4-star units. These characters basically never see any use anyways. The only 4-star characters that see use in any like bossing game modes, which is what we'll primarily be discussing today. Obviously there's always going to be use in like casual play, or like you can do like Ashley trials or Velvet Room trials, but none of these 4-star characters really see any use outside of Leon as a budget option, or Vino with Queen. But even then, like nowadays, we just have so many better units that these characters basically are completely outclassed. We're also not talking about Riddle. Riddle is a atrocious unit. We're not talking about Morgana. These characters are completely terrible. Skull could be a Messa fill-in, but honestly doesn't have good enough performance to really warrant a discussion. And Yui is completely terrible. She was getting outclassed on her own guild boss with the triple element modification by like the Makoto patch or the Queen patch, where she was like getting basically the same damage at A0. So we're not going to talk about her. You will have better units to use than her, I hope. So with that, let's get started at the very bottom, and we'll talk about, I think, 2 characters that will exemplify the philosophy of this tier list the best. The first character we're going to talk about is going to be On. And the reason we're going to talk about On, or Panther, first is because she actually, I think, is a good example of a character that synergizes well with Miku, but not game-breakingly so. So to analyze this a little bit further, I actually did mock up a couple of rotation charts for her. So as you can see here, we've got two different rotations. One is the current one that you use under your 6-turn rotation, and one is what you would be doing theoretically with the 8-turn rotation. And as you can see, her big damage turns line up pretty well with the additional 2 turns. I mean, any 2-turn damage dealer is generally going to work pretty well with this fight, just because those extra 2 turns allow for one more big damage burst turn. But Panther, I think, is one of those characters that works pretty well with the highlight A1 buffing aspect, because you can fit an extra one of your, and specifically going to be talking about this at high awareness is A6, just because that's whenever she starts to match some of the other DPSs. Her highlight, specifically this last highlight on turn 8, because you can fit a third one in if you reduce the highlight cooldown, you get that 100%, I believe it is, fire damage bonus, or fire damage taken maybe. You get a huge buff on the same turn that you're going to be activating that Levy and Rose skill 3 for your biggest damage turn. This is one of those characters that I think works really, really well with not just Miku, but also, spoiler alert, Miku's best unit, Chord, just because those additional highlights are going to add so much to her damage output that I think she works really well with Miku without having something that like puts her over the top, other than just she's getting 2 more turns of damage. Because everyone's getting 2 more turns of damage, but I just think she has good synergy because all of her damage turns line up with what the rotation is doing when it's changed 8 turns. The next character I think we should look at is going to be Joker. The reason why we should look at Joker is because Joker is a character that you think would be similar to On and has this, quick DPS rotation, is not going to be missing out on any damage by having the 2 extra turns. But Joker's kit doesn't have as good synergy with Miku because he is giving out more consistent damage that is benefited, I'd say, by her additional turns, but isn't being enhanced by any of her additional support. So the highlight reset already doesn't matter too much because Joker is already getting additional highlights off of the additional turns he's generating, because those count towards his highlight cooldown. So he's not actually getting much extra damage there. So as you can see, his rotation originally, if you're using, I would say a standard rotation for any of his bosses where he's actively triggering those extra skills, he's going to be able to highlight 3 different times throughout his rotation. And if you add Miku in there, you're going to get a 4th one. But the problem with this, or not really problem, but what makes him less synergistic than others is that Miku's awareness of resetting that cooldown just isn't giving you the same value that it would out of On, because On wouldn't be able, in these 2 turns, be able to naturally use that extra highlight. Joker can just use it anyways. Maybe there's a world where I think you could go highlight here, 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 and here, and then sneak another one in on the last turn. But I'm not really sure if that's possible. I was doing the math in my head, and I don't think it is. So maybe there's room for improvement there. But even he does benefit greatly with those additional turns of damage. But because he's just giving you just the same consistency of damage, he's not as synergistic with the highlight awareness buff. And that's kind of what we need to take into account with these, is that obviously every character is going to be better with the 2 extra damage turns. They want to have those 2 extra damage turns. But when we're talking about investing into Miku's higher awarenesses to really maximize some of these characters, Joker just isn't going to get that same value out of that A1 that some of these other characters would. All right, next up we've got Rin. Regular Rin is an interesting case of a character that's already not seeing a lot of use. Gets the most use in the Joker curse teams, but I think Rin is one of those anti-synergistic characters with Joker where her buffs, or her debuffs really, they only last for 2 hits of damage, not for 2 turns. And I think that is one of those important parts to note, is that because we're just hitting on damage instances, we're not hitting on turns, Rin really doesn't benefit that much from the extra turns or the highlights, because one, her highlight isn't super, super good. If you're running another, let's say you're running Joker and you're running another DPS, or sorry, not DPS, another support, like a turbo, you're just going to use the turbo highlight again. You're not going to, if you have the A1 and you get the reset, you're not really going to be using, additional like you're gonna, maybe you could sneak a Rin highlight in there, but I just don't think you'd rather maybe even use like a Joker, or not Joker, like a Wonder Dionysus highlight. She just doesn't. She does not really offer that much in terms of that highlight, or her debuffing isn't that great. But when you do debuff her, because the extra turns make it so the enemy doesn't act, the debuff doesn't have any synergy with the extra turns. And that's something that we're going to see kind of repeated here, is some of these characters really work well in terms of their buffing, debuffing with the extra turns. Some of them do not. And Rin is one of those characters that it kind of doesn't matter. And so because it's not getting impacted in any way, I'm just going to say no synergy, and we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. The next character on our list is going to be Marian, and this is another character that has no synergy because you're not using Marian's highlight. Marian's rotation doesn't change by this additional turns. You're just going to be either spamming skill 3 or skill 2, skill 3, or 1-3. There is no change there. So very simply put, she's just not getting any additional value out of this. Fox is a character that I think you would initially think, okay, well, his highlight isn't super great, and he's just a 2-turn DPS, so he's kind of like Joker, but a little worse. But I'm actually going to put him in anti-synergy. And the reason for this is that he needs, unless I'm completely mixing up how Miku's going to work for these characters, his damage comes from his counterattacks. And in the extra turn state, you're not getting attacked. So he's not actually ripping off any of his damage. So he's just sitting there. You can use the skill 2 Bone Chilling Cold. That's not going to do anything. Like, he is one of those characters that his damage is actually going to get completely capped if he's using Miku. And you know what? Maybe Miku's regular buffs are good enough to match that of like a Phoebe. But, you know, I guess I would rather, or maybe even like an Anj, because like the turn revert doesn't do anything really either. But this is one of those cases where his kit is just completely, it's pretty tough. We all know Fox is not the best DPS in the world, so no need to dog on my boy for any longer. Next up, we've got Queen, and Queen is an interesting case of a character that does have like a small rotation buff / rotation change, but I think only at A1. So I'm gonna mark an A1 here. We'll actually copy her real quick. The reason why I think this is like an A1 deal is because of like the way her crash out state works. So her regular rotation is pretty simple. It's like a 3-turn rotation, but it's not like turns 2 and 3 are getting the same level of damage mostly. It's kind of weird. So she's kind of just pumping out skill 3s. Whenever she has Miku, if you do the same thing, you're getting one of those skill 3s truncated. You do get the highlight buff, so she does work really well in that regard, being one of those highlight damage dealers. But I think, unfortunately, what you're losing out on that extra skill 3, it's not a huge deal. You're still getting the 1. Like, this is really not a big deal. Like, she's still really good with Miku, obviously. This is like one of those these 3-turn rotation DPSs that it kind of doesn't matter if you're skipping one of those turns, you're still getting good damage. But the reason why I say this is like an A1 differentiator unit is because you can activate Crash Out immediately, so you can go 2 3s, and then you'll have, take that 1 turn to rebuild the tenacity, activate it again, get the tenacity, activate it again, and so for the last 2 turns, you will have the 3, or the skill 3 up both times. You just won't have your Crash Out activate for this highlight, but I don't think that that's like a huge damage difference. I think as long as you're activating, it's fine. And I think the extra turns of the enemies not taking turns, it doesn't wear off any debuffs. So I think like that could you don't have to run like Vino, for example. You could just run Queen and use her skill 1 to stack all of the buffs, or stack all of the debuffs, elemental ailments is what they're called. So I think that is actually another synergy. So I actually do think Queen is really, really good with Miku if you have her at A1. And she's already like kind of weak anyways. So that is something to consider. But I do think that if you had her at A1 already, and maybe one day when she gets her Mindscape in like a couple years, I guess. I don't know when that's coming. But yeah, I think then I think Miku would benefit her enough to put her into these higher tiers. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and move up these characters because, again, I think that the way that her rotation works with her skill 3 is just too good with the 8-turn fight to put it kind of only in good. I think it's really great. I think we need to take out the fact that she's just not a highly used character. Take that out of our minds and just go based on synergy alone. Because that's what this is. This is not about how good a character is straight up. This is just about how well does the Miku rotation and higher awarenesses affect these characters and the rotations. We're going to go ahead and put all of our navigators, our 5-star navigators, in anti-synergy because, duh, these characters don't work with Miku. You can only use one navigator. In fact, you would put Futaba in like a tier below because people, like, whenever Miku got revealed, it's like, oh, Anj power creep. But the answer to that, like, Anj power creep cry is that no, Anj didn't get power creeped. Futaba got power creeped because you need 2 navigators in most bossing game modes. I hope they would add, a third guild boss or a third SOS boss one day, but until then, you're going to have to deal with your Futaba collecting dust once you beat all those Velvet Trials. But anyways, let's move on to the star of the show, Chord. And this one is like, it's obvious why this is. Chord is a unique instance of a character that operates almost like completely within how Miku wants her rotations to go. Even though she's usually skill or 3-turn unit with like Haru or with Makoto or with basically like name any highlight dealer that you're using Chord with, Messa, you're gonna activate her on a 3-turn basis. Chord does not need to be activated on a 3-turn basis. Her skill 3, the catchy hook that activates the highlight, that skill actually comes up on turn 2. And I'm sure people have misclicked it on turn 2 plenty of times in their 3-turn guild bosses or Nightmare or Sea of Souls bosses, thinking it was turn 3 when it's turn 2. But I think right here, this is one of those cases where you actually want to be doing that on turn 2 because it allows you to have that third catchy hook on turn 8 with all the buffs active. I mean, this is truly insane stuff right here. Any character that's going to be able to activate or wants to activate multiple highlights, mostly the 2-turn DPSs that synergize well with Miku already. I mean, Chord is going to be completely nuts with her. Not to mention, with her A1, resetting those highlight cooldowns, you're going to be able to use that highlight that Chord has, where she gives you the 40% damage bonus and gives you the additional highlight meter charge over the course of 4 turns. I mean, you're going to be able to activate that twice. And so I'm thinking like, turn 4 or the fourth action of turn 7, you activate the highlight. And then turn 8, by the time Chord comes back around, you're going to activate the highlight again. And then by the time the DPS is up for the last turn of the fight, you get the DPS highlight back. I mean, this is, and potentially if you're getting other highlight buffs, maybe you could sneak in like a twins highlight. I mean, this is going to be completely insane. Completely insane stuff. I don't know like exactly what these rotations are going to look like, but I just think she's going to be, any character that synergizes well with Chord is going to be like Miku's best friend. It's going to be like, no wonder, right? I almost think that they kind of made Miku with Chord in mind because they're both like the singers. Because I mean, it's like why in the world does this like work? I almost think they might have been thinking of this when they made Chord in the first place. Because why would you ever need to activate Catchy Hook on turn 2? Like that just I can't understand it. Very happy though. I love Chord, so I'm happy that this is the case because I'm super excited for the rotations that this is gonna bring, and Chord is gonna have I think really great longevity, especially with the one of, I guess I won't spoil it for now, but be warned in the future I'll touch on it on this video. But some of the upcoming units she is like super nuts with, so I'm super excited for this. Yeah, she's broken, probably the best character to work with Miku. Yeah, enough said, basically. Another thing I forgot to mention is that her A6 also was like completely crazy with it because she gets to activate 4 catchy hooks instead of 3. I mean, it's not like the same level of like this is like almost uncannily synergistic, but it is still super broken with it, obviously. I mean, any A6 unit is going to be broken, but I think hers especially too. The next character we're going to be talking about is Summer Closer. Summer Closer, or Tropical Motoha, is, I think, an interesting case of a character that, kind of like Joker, just isn't very good, doesn't see a lot of use at all, but I think you kind of have to separate the art from the artist and go, yeah, she's really synergistic with Miku in a lot of ways. I think one is obviously the highlight stuff. She's a highlight damage dealer. But also another one is her that I don't think people kind of realized is she is her tropical heart stacks, and the way that she collects, or the way that once she activates the extra instances of skill 3. So if we go look at a rotation, usually you're going to use skill 3 and then you use skill 1 and then use skill 3 again. But by the time you use that skill 3 again, you're going to have your tropical heart from like whatever healer you're using. So you use that again and then like that. But I think, there's a case to be made that this extra activation of tropical heart, it's synergistic. It makes sense to call it a good synergy, right? Because you get the tropical heart on turn 6 with this rotation, but you don't get to use it. There's like another rotation I've seen where like you use double healer and you like heal her like 4 or 5 times on her first turn so that she gets the tropical heart before she activates skill 1 at A0. I don't really know why you'd have this character at A1, but I guess if you did, good to you. But like you could have 2 tropical hearts here, and then you'd have 2 on 5 and 6 or whatever. That seems kind of ridiculous to me. But here, you get the additional highlight. You get to have the 2 tropical heart utilizations. So, not the worst in the world. So we'll call it good. Again, this character just doesn't see a lot of use. But this is better synergy than like Joker, for example. Because yeah, she gets the 2 additional turns of damage, the 2 full additional turns of damage, but she also gets like the benefits of that A1 highlight reduction and the the extra turns giving her this tropical heart bonus. Next character is the other summer unit, and that would be Summer Tomoko, or tropical, or like Seaside Tomoko, Summer Moko, not really sure. This is a character like a little bit better than Marian in terms of her synergy, because like there is a world where you get like her highlight off. I mean, I think I can't imagine. Like I remember back in the good old days when Haru first came out, I think there were rotations where you would want to use like Summer Moko's highlight in the rotation for some reason. I don't really know why. I also think that the extra turns may be fine for like debuffing reasons, but she never has like downtime on any of her debuffs, so I don't think that matters either. I will put it on low just because like there's maybe like 1 or 2 fringe cases where I could like see this being useful. I'm kind of tempted to put it to no synergy, but I don't know. We'll call it fair here. But Messa is a character that I think is very interesting because he has, I think, both a case for being high synergy and low synergy with Miku. The first reason is that he does a lot of highlight damage just with Chord, so he's obviously good there. But his damage over time effects do not synergize with the extra turn skill. It's the same case of Fox, where because the enemies aren't acting, they're not getting the damage over time unless unless they change how this works. But I think this is how it's going to work. He does get to activate some of his DOT effects naturally with the skills, like his I think it's like the second version of his skill 1 like may activate 1 instance of like the bleed damage, or maybe that's like his natural skill 2. Not really sure, but that's still a good amount of damage that you're losing. The thing is though, he doesn't deal a lot of damage anyways with with this DOT, especially after like the damage reduction. He does mostly just like natural fizz damage. So we're gonna put him in low synergy just because he gets the Chord buff, because Chord is totally insane with him. And he gets to activate the DOT, and he only gets the 2 turns of not having that bleed damage. So we'll call it fine. But let me actually take him off and copy him for 1 second, because there is a case to be made that, again, A1, this character is actually worse with Miku. Not worse by damage numbers, worse with synergy. Like, if you had an A1 Messa, the synergy is going to be way worse because he deals much more damage with his DOT. He gets a 1.5 times almighty bleed effect up or whatever. And he also has more bleed stacks and activates them more readily. But he does not get basically any support with those last 2 turns from the bleed. It's like the same as A0. So it's not giving you much synergy there. And again, we already have him here saying like, hey, look, if you have him at A0, he's going to be good. You're going to be missing out on some damage, but it's not going to matter that much. You have him, if you want to push him to A1 with the intent of using him with Miku, I mean, you probably should not. Unless you already have him at A1, and then it's fine. But yeah. All right, next character, we've got Cherish. We're going to put this no synergy. Again, this is like same thing as Marian. This character is pretty bad anyways, but just not good. And the only team where you're really using him actively is like the Fox team, and Fox is terrible with Miku, so whatever. Or maybe not terrible, but whatever. All right, another character I want to copy because this is another character that has a difference between the A1 and the A0, where the A1, this character, not at all. This character needs 3 turns to set up. You need the 1 turn to use the skill 1, the 1 turn to use the skill 3, you need to use the highlight in the middle, and then you need to activate the gun on the 3rd turn. And if you have 8 turns, you're not doing that. It's not happening. Taking a look at the way that this works, I mean, you're getting the gun skill here and here on the 8-turn rotation. You're just not getting that 3rd gun skill, and the 1 and 3 move, or the 1 and 3 skills that you're doing, it's no damage. It's like terrible. You're getting an additional highlight if you have the A1, but I just don't think that that's dealing enough damage to really make up for this. It is no synergy at all. But the reason why I wanted to make a copy and say there's a difference between the A1 is because her A1 automatically activates skill 1 at the beginning of the battle. And usually for 3-turn fights, that like doesn't matter. You get to use an extra skill 3 in there. But this is the same thing with Chord. You get to use gun a turn early in this rotation. It starts to be kind of nice, where you can go, okay, we're going to use skill 3, skill 1 automatically, then use skill 3, turn 2, you're going to shoot the gun. You have to activate the highlight on one of these turns, which is a little tricky because you have to have some like cards already to use, because you need to activate the highlight before this gun, and then you need to activate the highlight before this gun. So, there's a lot of different circumstances that go in here. Let me go back real quick. Like, this is another one where, like, Chord is going to be totally insane with the A1, because her highlights you'll be able to activate on the same turns you're doing the gun, so you don't have to worry about this. This is just going to be extra. But you just want to be activating you want to activate the highlight before the gun, of course, or you're not going to be able to use it. So a little bit of rotation theory crafting to go on there, but I mean, the difference in damage between her A1 and A0 with Miku is going to be, I would assume, pretty insane. Enough to where I would say, like, it's no synergy to, like, great synergy. I would put this, at the very top of the tier list. And so I will put this character, I think I'll put this character maybe even in best, because it fits so perfectly. It is, it's going to be beautiful, right? It's like Chord level of this rotation is made for Miku almost. Again, I don't really know. This is again another case of Haru's going to get outclassed pretty soon. She's already kind of getting power crept by a lot of these late damage dealers like Akihiko, but the rotation is so perfect that I have to put it up here. I just have to. All right, next up we got the twins, and this is another difference between A0 and A1. If I'll get the copy, please. Where we'll put them. We'll use all forms here because all the forms I think are benefited equally by the Miku A1 buffs. I think this is no synergy really with. I'll put it low synergy with the A0, and I'm gonna put best synergy with the A1. The reason I'm going to do it like this is because the twins highlight of usually, the fire and ice one is the one you're most interested in. So that's the one that's in this sweeper, strategist, and medic rolls, which is the 3 rolls that are the best for the twins, that highlight is totally insane. And being able to get an extra turn of the fire and ice highlight, that is really important, which is why I'm going to put it in best, because you're also getting, the additional turns for the twin buffs. I mean, twins are just naturally a great unit, but you get, because, I mean, I'm assuming the way this will work, is if when you get to the extra turns and you get the highlights reset, assuming you use the twins highlight like late on turn 5 or 6 or whatever, by the time turn 7 comes along, you're going to have that highlight up again, and you're going to want to rip that as soon as possible because it's just a ton more damage for those last 2 turns. So that's why I'm putting it in best, is because that the buffing highlight is just totally insane. And same thing for low. If there wasn't the buffing highlight, these characters would get shifted down 1 or whatever, because the twins rotation would get a little messy with A0 if you're not getting the skill 3 getting automatically activated, because you wouldn't have it available for that last turn, or maybe you wouldn't have it available for turn 8 if you went 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2. You could do something where you went like skill 1, skill 2, skill 1 again, then 3, then 2 1 3 2, and so then you have skill 3 available for the last one, but you're capping the first half of your rotation. I mean, it's really messy. So we'll put them at low just for the sake of the highlights. But I don't know. Not kind of just goes with the other support units that we'll follow up on later. Next up is Frostgale Katone, or Frostgale Mont, or Figure Skater Mont, or I'm not really sure what the legal name is right now that they're calling on this server. But that's okay, because this character is good, I think. I think this is like, maybe I'll even put it in high, just because it's like a 2-turn damage dealer that synergizes super well with Chord. As opposed to On and Closer, I think just having the higher DPS numbers with Chord makes her synergy a lot better. And then she's a 2-turn DPS. I just don't really see any reason why she wouldn't just be pretty insane with Miku. Maybe nothing that's like setting her apart in terms of like the extra turns, so no debuffs really there that's getting her over the edge. Maybe there's like a debuff in the ice kit that I'm missing, but yeah, I think that she's just typically gonna be very strong. So we'll put her at high. And then in terms of our next character, Runa, Howler, gonna go in no. Reason for this is very simple. This is a debuffer that does actually go off of damage, so that's good, but the damage doesn't actually get changed in any way by having the extra turns, because I looked at her kit and I was like, her kit has the skill 1 and the skill 2 that you use based on if you're doing like a single target or multi-target fight, and then you use the skill 3 and then you repeat. And I was thinking, well, maybe you could stack the skill 2 and skill 3 because it debuffs the enemy, doesn't buff your party. So you could go like skill 1, turn 6, or sorry, skill 2 or whatever, skill 1, turn 5, then skill 3, turn 6, and then the other skill on turn 7. So by turn 8, you'd have the 2 skills stacked. That'd be awesome. They actually don't stack. Like in the kit, it says these characters don't, or these kits don't stack. So, yeah, ouch. I guess that's that. So she's gonna go in no, and also her highlight's not like super useful. So yeah, kind of has the Rin thing of like not super good. All right, next character is Wind Vast, or Tempest Riko, or whatever. But she is another character that is split on if she is higher or not, and I think she is here like this, because the reason I'm saying this is because, one, she does have like the really, really good highlight that everybody wants to use. Or if you're running like double, if you're running twins and win, so double strategist, maybe you would rather use the twins, but she's got a really good highlight too. So it's only weaker by a little bit. But the reason why I'm going to put the A1 in high is because she can stack her just like you would in the guild boss, where like you have to deal the damage before it gets to the weaken phase. She gets to stack the skill 1 and the skill 2. Looking at her her rotations, so we've got on turn 6 her skill 1, and assuming this is A1, or you're using a character that benefits from the skill 1. So if you're using like a win character, Otherwise, you'd need like the A1 for this to matter. You use that skill 1 on turn 6. It applies the different debuffs, like the skill 1 debuff, and then potentially getting the windswept on it. And then for turn 7 and 8, you can have those debuffs actives. Turn 8, you get to use that skill 2. So you get to have the additional buff there for that last turn. So that and having the good highlight damage, just like the twins, that's enough for me to put it in high. Again, I think that this is about as good as you can get for like a support synergy standpoint that isn't like Chord. Just because of, you want to be able to stack the debuffs on these enemies that are frozen. I don't know how much this is going to matter, but I think it's kind of cool. So we'll put her there. All right, next character we're going to go over is going to be Mio or Matoi, and also CNY Rin. These two kind of go together as a pair. I'm putting Matoi in low, and the reason why I'm doing that and not any higher is because she has like the Runa problem, but like a little bit less. What I mean by that is she's got 3 skills. One of them is completely useless. So that skill 2 is like a single target ice damage thing that like inflicts icebound, I think. It's not good. It doesn't do anything. You get the same effect by using the highlight. So just not good. She does get the benefit over Runa because she doesn't have that ability to like use the freeze to stack some of her skills, but she does get some debuffs from her highlight, and so she can use the highlight, and then they last until the end of the fight once you go into the virtual concert. So that's pretty good synergy. Unfortunately, she doesn't really like get anything else from having her highlights decreased in terms of like A1 synergy. If this was A0, I mean, she'd probably be a little higher, but in terms of like higher awarenesses, investment synergy, not as much. She doesn't want to use her highlight multiple times because the debuffs don't stack. So it doesn't really matter. They don't wear off from the enemy. So she can just use the highlight once before the final 4 turns, or the final 2 turns really, and then she's good to go. So she doesn't really benefit from that additional highlight. And then if you use another, because she wants to use the highlight close to the end, you can't like be like, okay, well, I'm going to use her highlight this turn, and then I'm going to use another support character, like let's say Wind Vassal, I'm going to use her highlight on that turn 7. Well, her highlight isn't getting like reduced or getting affected by the A1 in any way. So there's just not as much synergy with those higher awarenesses, which is what we're trying to analyze here. So I'll put her in low. And again, maybe that's not fair because I actually think Firecracker Rin is high. And the reason for this is kind of like the opposite of what I just said with Matoi, where like she does benefit from having those enemies frozen. Looking at the current rotation, she basically has no reason to use skill 2. She just goes 1 3 1 3 1 3. But the frozen enemies, I think, it opens up the doorway to having those skill 2 debuffs being applied for the remainder of the fight on turn 5 and onward. So that'll affect her last highlights. It'll improve her overall damage. She already likes to deal highlight damage. She already is a 2-turn DPS. So I'm looking at this and I go, she already hits or checks a lot of the boxes for the synergy with Miku, and then we're also getting this additional skill 2 investment. Like I just think that's good. I think that's good. And again, like I said, we're looking at the totality of the kit. This is just another reason to use her full kit to her advantage, and I really like that. So we're gonna put her with really high synergy. I think this is great. She'd been high synergy at A0, but getting those extra highlights, sign me up, right? All right, next character is one of the most interesting ones. I actually had to do a little bit of research for this one. We've got Violet. Now, Violet is one of those characters where you initially think like, okay, there's no way, right? This is a character that synergizes super well with Chord, but she like needs the 3 turns to set up because she goes like, she gives the other character the invitation or the attack bonus, and she's dealing the additional damage, and then after that turn wears off, then she enters the spellbound or whatever. Like she's getting like or it's Masquerade, not Spellbound. It's called Masquerade. Yeah, she's getting Masquerade, and then Yeah, she's ripping all her damage on turn 3. But she also has the Chord thing where she doesn't have to go into a 3-turn rotation right off the bat. Looking at her current rotation and how it could change, if you kept the same, rotation of 2-1-3, 2-1-3 highlights on the damage turns, yeah, that's fine. You would get like no benefit out of that on the last 2 turns. But if you changed it to where you're buffing on that first turn, and then the same turn that you are activating the sub DPS damage bonuses, you also activate your highlight and your skill 3 to remove all the stacks. I think that's actually not a terrible use of your highlights, highlight damage. You can, it synergizes with Chord, it lines up on the same turns. You get the damage here. You still get the same 2 damage turns here. This turn 1, turn 2 damage is already pretty bad, anyways. So this is one where, maybe it's not like highest level of synergy because she's not really getting 2 full turns worth of damage. Maybe she's getting only a turn and a half worth. I don't know the exact numbers on these. I would assume, maybe that's wrong. Maybe that having the additional turn to rip the highlight, even if it is half damage with the Chord buffs, I think that's probably enough to say this is going to be really strong. Maybe not the best, most pleasant thing in the world, but I mean, it could work. It really could work. And also you could change this up to be 2, 3, 1, 2, where you're doing the twins / turbo thing where you're getting the double step stacks on the same turn she's entering Masquerade, or to get the Spellbind Cinders activation. I think that's what that talent is called. So you could change it up. A lot of interesting things to be done here. Again, less damage on these turns, but there is a potential here to at least make something workable. And because she works so well with Chord and already is she doesn't. One thing I'll say about the A1 analysis is, she doesn't really have a highlight gauge, so she doesn't actually benefit from having any of that additional highlight stuff. But other characters like the twins that want to have their buffing highlights active a lot, she's already going to be benefiting from that a lot. So there's still we'll have to wait and see how this one shakes out. But that's my preliminary analysis of it. So I think that means that I'm going to go ahead and put her in good. I'm debating between good or high. I really don't think I can put it in high based on it feels like you're kind of handicapping that first rotation, and because she's not getting any A1 special treatment per se, maybe she is able to get the additional Chord highlights active, and especially if you have a higher awareness Chord, oh my goodness, A4 Chord, oh, that damage is going to be sweet. And again, she's Namba with A6, but I guess at that point, if you're A6 and Chord, maybe you have an A higher awareness, A6 Violet. Hard to say, but oh well. All right, next character, Turbo. Another weird one with the awarenesses and the rotations, where right now she does the Chord thing, where she has the first turn is normal, and then the second turn she has the extra turn, and then she has to go 2 turns waiting, and then on turn 5 she can activate that extra turn to get the skill 3 buffs active, and then it's every 3 turns from there. Unless you have either A1, where you're activating it every turn, or you are playing with Joker, basically. Or you're playing with an A6 Queen, I guess, where the Queen is getting additional turns. Where, in that case, you're activating your additional turn every turn, and I think it doesn't really matter, because either way, I think she's still having great rotational synergy and highlight synergy, or maybe not so much highlight synergy, but definitely good rotational synergy with Miku. Checking in with her rotations, right now, the way it works, again, like I said, it's got the 2 and the 5, or you could go turn 3, turn 6 on her rotation. I don't think it matters too much. But she's kind of a 3-turn buffer at A0, 2-turn buffer at A1 if you're playing with Joker. But either way, I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm saying this lines up pretty well. If you're playing with A1, you get the turn 2, 4, 6, and 8, 2 and 3 activation. That's a lot of extra turns. It's a lot of extra turns to charge highlights. she gets to activate multiple highlights because she gets the chance to have the additional turns to like lower her cooldown. So there's a lot of good stuff to think about here. She doesn't have like the same level of synergy with the highlights because she already reduces her own highlight gauge faster by having the additional turn. But I think it's still worthy of like a high level of synergy, just because she isn't missing out on any of the big damaging turns with her rotation for a skill 2 or a 2 skill, or sorry, 2 turn or a 3 turn DPS. She's not changing that at all. So I actually think it's going to be fine. So we'll go ahead and keep her status as a really great support with Miku. Again, I'm not really sure where to put Turbo in terms of high or good. I think, even though she's not getting maybe the same level of value out of the cooldown on the highlight, I do think that she could still have synergy with those extra turns. Like I know that the A1 says that the highlights get they get like they activate or they charge a little bit faster. We have no numbers on that, so I don't know if it's like 10% every additional rotation, so maybe you can sneak an additional one in there. I don't actually know how much faster the highlights are going to get charged. So maybe having like an extra turn or two within the virtual concert does make a difference and does allow you to launch an extra highlight. So I guess for that reason, I will keep her in high. Next up is Crow. And Crow is also going to go in high, but I think that this one is more so just because he acts more like a support almost. He's a sub DPS, and he kind of works better with any other 2-turn DPS within the same kind of rotation structure. So like I'm thinking a Frost Scale Katone or anything like that. Now, one thing I would like to note is that Miku already, like at A6, does kind of do what Crow does. So that's a little bit tough. But this is not an A6 awareness analysis. This is a A1 plus kind of thing. So for now, I think we'll put him in high just because I think he like naturally syncs up so well with Miku in terms of his rotation, and potentially some of the other characters that benefit from Miku's rotation as well. So there's a couple things about his rotation that I do want to make mention of. One is that the highlight, it's like a 4-turn highlight instead of like a 2-turn or highlight that's somewhere, or just like a DPS highlight. Like it increases the hits on his skill 3 or the DPS snapshot skill. I believe so, at least. I'm pretty sure this is how it works. So he does get, like, if you highlight on turn 5, these turns you can use for highlighting your DPS and like your strategist or whatever. So, maybe there's something there, instead of like you would already use it on turn 3 instead of like on a normal rotation. Like you'd go turn 2, use your DPS highlight, turn 3, use this highlight, turn 5 you're using your twins or your turbo or whatever, and then turn 6 you're using the DPS again. So maybe not as good, but I don't know, maybe it's like there's something here that makes it valuable. And just like having like the 2-3 2-3 2-3, all of his skills line up super well with everyone else's rotation. Like that's the reason why I think he works pretty well with Miku, and also because other characters get their highlights freed up for the last 2 turns. Because sometimes, in some cases, that's like a higher synergy. Some cases it's lower. But I think because Crow like already is like a personal damage dealer as well, like you probably want to have some of those. You want to be able to like stick the highlight on turn 5, forget about it. It doesn't work as well with the rest of the character or the rest of the kit, but like if your DPS is getting 2 more additional highlights out of it, that's a lot of good damage that he's getting there too. So I'm going to put it, I think, in high. But again, Crow is kind of already like a really weird character. I also checked on his skill like 2 versus his skill 1, and I was like, well, maybe like the skill 1 or skill 2 is like a debuff and the skill 1 is a buff, so you could stack the skill 2 and the skill 1 as A0. So, because I know at A1 you get to use 1 2 1 2, but at A0 you can only use one or the other. that doesn't work. It's a buff, not a debuff. So please disregard that. So I don't know if this one makes you want to pull Crow, all the pirates are you, I guess. All right. Next up, we've got our theurgy characters, and our theurgy characters are a little bit tricky because they don't synergize as well with the highlights of Miku, like the highlight recharge. But like I said before, the highlights do charge faster in virtual state, and they also said that theurgies charge faster too, but I have no clue what the number is on that. I don't know if it's like 35 plus or if it's only like 10 plus. Like, I don't know what the actual number is, so I can only guess. I'm gonna just go and do this analysis based on, like, what if there are theurgies, like they didn't get any additional theurgy gauge, what would that look like? Adjust it up or down a tier based on what actually happens. So starting off as Makoto, Yuki. This is a tough one. I'm maybe gonna go good. The reason for this is because, again, he doesn't have the highlights energy, but he does, with the 2 extra turns, potentially get an additional theurgy off with Yukari. He does have the same like thing with Anj, where because he's getting the extra turns, he's potentially getting like another natural theurgy, so he doesn't even need Yukari there. Like, and again, the other DPSs can still like use their highlights twice in a row, so I think there's a possibility for his damage to still be quite good for Miku. And again, just because he's a 2-turn DPS, he's not missing out on any damage. I think he's going to get good performance with Miku. So I've put up a couple of the rotations that are commonly used with Makoto. So there's the normal rotation where you have the this is what I made a video on the other day, of using just Ardenari and then Cadenza instead of using Cadenza and Ardenari together, and using the turn revert. In total, this gives you these are both kind of the same in terms of their full moon stacks, where they give you the same number of full moon activations of 3. So it's 3 here, right? The 1 and then the 1 and the 1 reverted. And then here it's the 1 and then the 2, but this one's only activated on the second part of the turn. So it's 1 and then 2. So 1 plus 2 is just 3. Now, if we go and we say, what if he didn't get any other additional theurgy buff, and we just went with it? Like, we just used the theurgies as they came, and we just did the normal rotation like this, and we didn't have Yukari. Then it would be Ardenari here, so you get the damage here, and then the normal thing here, and then you get to use Cadenza, and then on turn 8 you get to use Ardenari again, because you get the additional theurgy. Now, I'm wondering if you can use your Cadenza here, right here, instead of, like, hold on to it, don't use the theurgy here, hold on to it, and the theurgy charge is enough to give him 1 extra turn, so like 30 theurgy worth of charge. He can do this like Cadenza Ardenari kind of combo without having to sacrifice the additional Anj turn. Now I think the Anj turn revert might still be better, but like you could go, Cadenza Ardenari here, you still get the 3 activations, which is kind of what I want to say, like why he's only in good, is because you're still, no matter which way you slice it, you're getting 3 activations of the full moon damage. You're only going to get 3, unless you have a higher awareness, or if you're using Yukari. But again, if you're using Yukari, I think you're only doing, you're only going to do 4, because she's going to just go like, use theurgy here, and then she charges it up and use it here, and then here, and then here. So I don't think it actually changes. I don't know, like, if adding additional theurgy gets him to use like 3 in 2 turns. Like, I just don't think that that's going to happen, right? Like, the reason, like, let me pull up the next slide and we'll talk about Akihiko and Yukari in the same breath, is because, like, if Yukari is adding 35 energy on turns 3, 5, and 7 at her A0, A1 would be, if I'm not mistaken, you get to use like 2, 3, 2, 3. So maybe A1 would be different. But at that point, like, we're kind of lost in the sauce there. Like, the whole point is, if she's adding additional 35 here, like, he's not getting any additional usage. Like, is he going to use cadenza here, and then Yukari charges 35 here, and then he gets an additional bonus from Miku, and so then he can use Ordinary in his turn, and then Ordinary again on turn 8. I don't think that that's gonna happen. So we're gonna chalk it up to like it doesn't matter. That's gonna be like we'll say that it doesn't matter because it makes our analysis a lot easier. Okay, back to Makoto. Actually, no, we're kind of done with Makoto. That's it. You know, he does get the A1 kind of good because the twins could potentially have a buff here and here, so he's getting, you know, 3 whole twins plus theurgy skill 3 turns when turns 2, 6, and 8, but hard to tell. Akihiko, this is what his turn order looks like now if you're using it at A0, or I usually just use him with Yukari, so I don't know if you would rather use the theurgy turn 4, 5, or 6, but he only gets 1 on his A0 rotation. Now, he gets 2 for his A1, but also he gets 2 with Yukari, because Yukari's adding, over the course of the fight, 70 theurgy energy. So he gets 1 on turn 3 and turn 6. This is lovely. Now, what if he has Miku at A0 with no Yukari? Then it looks stupid, because you do get to use 2 theurgies. That's great. That's really nice. We all love that. Anj couldn't do that, because Anj only gives you 1 extra turn, only gives you like a turn 7 worth of theurgy. So you don't get to use the extra theurgy. But I mean, this rotation is just disgusting. It's like you get turn 3 or turn 2, you got to use skill 3 after like having no punch, and it like totally messes up the rotation. You don't get the max stacks. Like I did some damage testing. Like the skill 3 is doing 4 million per on like these turn 3s, but if I use it on turn 2, I'm getting like 900,000 on each enemy. So it's like a 4 times damage bonus that you're losing. So it is very significant. And the theurgies don't line up with the punch turns, like because you want to use the punch, and then you want to do the theurgy, and then you want to use the skill 3 because you want to have them knocked down for the big damage, because he gets the damage bonus on the knockdown enemies. I mean, it's just disgusting. And with Yukari, he doesn't even get an additional turn with Yukari. Now again, this could change because maybe the Miku A1 gives him an additional theurgy, so maybe he goes like bang theurgy here. Right, because this is the as it comes, this is the line it up kind of difference. So we've got bang, use it on turn 3, bang, use it on turn 6, and maybe he gets, he ends the fight with 105. If he gets, what is that? 35 more, so 1 more turn worth of whatever, of theurgy gauge highlight stuff, he does get an additional theurgy. Then he can use it on, 3, 6, and 8, but he's not dealing any damage on turn 8. He's not the theurgies still don't line up with his big damage turns. So it's just ugly, it's just nasty, and I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see for the actual numbers on this, because it's tough to tell. I mean, I'm pretty sure Fuka's gonna be better for the C's units, just because the theurgy buffing is like more consistent, and getting the extra character is still pretty important. So like with Koromaru and Fuka might still be better than Miku here, but that might be cap. We'll have to wait and see. All right, finally going back to our tier list, we're gonna go ahead and put Yukari in low again, because Yukari herself doesn't actually. She only gets an additional turn of the theurgy highlight, or the theurgy gauge bonus, and she gets like an addition. She doesn't get any bonuses from having an additional turn of her own theurgy. It's just a way to like get her bonuses so that she can use that skill 3 and get the 35 additional energy. And then yeah, I think Akihiko's going in no synergy. Maybe that's a little harsh, because he can get naturally one extra highlight, which maybe that's important. Whereas like an Anj at A0 doesn't do that. So that actually could be pretty relevant. So I'll put him at low. But the C's units are pretty tragic. So I wouldn't expect much out of them. The last thing that I want to touch on before I go is what characters upcoming that haven't been released that are the best with Miku. Again, in terms of like an A1 higher awareness value analysis standpoint. So spoilers if you don't want to know what characters are coming up, but I'm pretty sure you probably already know some of the characters that are going to be released. That's kind of like how this game works, is that CN is a whole year ahead of us, so we know some of the characters that are going to come out. But the answer to the question of what characters are going to work best with Miku in terms of her higher and stuff is any character that works well with Chord. I mean, this is just short and sweet. It's broken. It's broken. The main character that's going to be like, I see in the future totally ballistically stupid, is like Radiant Closer or like Radiance. Alright, I'm not sure what the name is. The awakened Motoha, basically. That is the one that like works kind of on the same wavelength as Chord. Of she can use her big damaging skills on turns 2, 5, and 8. So she gets the same rotation stuff as Chord, and therefore can match up with Miku really well. So I think that's going to be like a totally insane team. Barry is one that's coming out soon. We were thinking maybe next patch, but it seems like they're going to do summer next. So we're going to get maybe 2 more patches until Barry, unfortunately, because I know she's a fan favorite. So we'll have to wait for her. But luckily, she works really well with Chord. Unluckily, she doesn't actually work as well with the Miku like extra turn stuff, because she's a DOT character as well as like a highlight character. So she doesn't benefit as much from having those enemies frozen. Like that's actually kind of a negative for her. Now she does have more activation or more ways to activate it outside of just like waiting for the enemy to act than Messa. So she's a little bit better there. And a lot of her damage does come from her highlights, which does automatically activate the DOT stacks. So she's not like completely stuck in the mud there. So it's like, think like the A0 Mesa stuff, where like a lot of her damage doesn't really come from the DOT. So it doesn't really matter. A lot of her damage is just based on having the DOT active. But because she works so well with Chord, and again, it works on that same rotation of you actually want to use her highlights on turns 2 and 5. So she's going to be great with Chord. She's going to be great all around. I think, again, we'll have to see how the DOT damage goes, but again, any other character in the future that works really well with Chord, or some of the characters I've mentioned today, they're going to be really, really strong. And I think that just about does our tier list or analysis on the Miku rotations. So, whenever Miku comes out, which will probably be by the time you see this video, because this is being made the night before Miku comes out, we'll be able to all experiment and strategize on these rotations and all this stuff. And I'm super excited for the A1, because I think the A1 adds so much rotation, like creativity, and so many options. And that's what I find most enjoyable in this game, is creating unique interactions between the characters in terms of their highlights and skills, and trying to maximize damage in ways that the devs maybe did or did not intend. So I just think it's really awesome. I'm really excited for it, and I will definitely be posting some of my findings on some of these characters and rotations and theurgies and highlights and all those buzzwords or whatever. So definitely look forward to that. I think it's going to be really exciting. I'm excited for it. So we'll have to see how it goes with some of these characters, but I think a lot of these characters are going to have a new life breathed into them. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got something out of this. It's going to be a good reference, or good pull guide, quote unquote, even though it's not a kit overview or kit detail, because again, the answer to should you pull? Yes, you should. Should you pull the A1? I think this is your answer right here. Is, do these characters that you see on the screen that synergize well with it, are these the characters that you like playing the most, or you have invested in the most? If the answer is yes, then I'd say you might want to consider it. But that'll be all from me. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.